And thank all of you for allowing me to come back home, so to speak, because this church was kind of my launching pad into a whole bunch of new awarenesses and consciousnesses. And so I'm just so happy to be here in any capacity in joining the spiritual family today. And I want to open with kind of an amusing story that I think is on point. And it's about this couple, Bob and Sally, who were married for 50 years. And they had been childhood sweethearts. And so after they got married, they never left the neighborhood in which they had lived their entire lives. And so on their 50th anniversary, they went back to the school where they first met. They walked down to the school. And they went into that 7th grade classroom, and they found the desk where Bob had carved out, "Bob loves Sally." And they share a kiss, and then they went home holding hands. And on their way home, an armored truck turns the corner, and a bag spills out and lands just at their feet. So they pick it up and they take it home. They look inside, and they count out $50,000. And Bob says, "We got to give it back." And Sally says, "Finders keepers." And she takes the money, puts it back in the bag, and hides it upstairs in the attic. And the next morning, a couple of FBI agents come knocking at the door, and they say, "Did you folks by chance find any money yesterday?" And Sally says, "No." And Bob says, "She's lying. It's upstairs in the attic where she hid it." And Sally says, "Don't listen to him. Lately he's been a little bit confused." And so the FBI agent says, "I'll tell you what, why don't you tell me the whole story and start at the very beginning?" And Bob says, "Well, it all started yesterday. Sally and I were holding hands walking home from school." And the FBI agent turns to his partner and says, "Let's get out of here. This is a waste of time." When I was a little boy, I very frequently pretended to be sick so I wouldn't have to go to school. And I know that Mom always kind of knew that I was faking it, but she just didn't put up much of a fight. And so I would just head for the couch and turn on the television and watch a lot of TV game shows. And there's one in particular that I always thought was so fascinating, called To Tell the Truth. And I understand it's airing again now on Sunday nights in a slightly different format. But in case you never found out what this show was about, I'll set it up for you, and that it always opened with 3 people coming out, each of which was claiming to be the very same exact person. They gave the same name. And then there was always something unique about them. Either they were working a very different kind of a job, or they had experienced something different in life that was out of the ordinary. So for example, on one show, all 3 contestants came forward and they said they claimed to be the chief dessert chef at the White House for the last couple of administrations. And on another show, 3 gentlemen showed up and they each claimed to have a 20-year amnesia experience in their lives. And then there was a panel consisting of 4 people. And the panelists can engage with the 3 contestants and ask them any questions that they want in order to try to determine who was the real deal in the whole thing. And the only rule was that the real person, the authentic person, had to answer the questions truthfully. The other 2 could lie through their teeth. They could use facial expressions, anything that they wanted to try to be deceptive. And then after the questioning, the panelists would cast ballots in terms of which ones they thought were the real deal. What always fascinated me about the show is how often they got it wrong. I mean, they had complete liberty to ask absolutely anything that they want, and it was extremely rare that all 4 ballots would be cast for the right person, and more often than not, there would be more ballots cast for the imposters than for the real person. And I open with this today because I just want to start by making the point that the truth can be so elusive. And way back not that long ago really, when I was in seminary, we used to refer to ourselves as truth seekers or truth students. It's a long-standing tradition at Unity Village. And then one day I was attending a chapel service that was being conducted by one of my classmates, and during her message she made a very, very bold statement. She said, "We are not truth seekers, we are truth livers." And I remember when I heard it at the time, I really felt kind of uneasy because it just seemed to smack of arrogance and was somehow self-righteous. And even now when I'm sharing this, you know, those feelings kind of get resurrected in me a little bit. But again, truth can be so elusive. And I will share with you that if ever I were called to court, if I were subpoenaed to testify, and they were swearing me in and they asked me the question, "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" I think I would have to answer no. See, I'm okay with telling the truth, and I'm okay with that nothing but the truth part. But that part about the whole truth gives me some issues. Because I don't believe anybody owns the whole truth. I believe that each of us owns part of the whole truth. And so maybe it's important to make some distinctions here. That part of the whole truth that we own is our personal truth. It's our truth with a small letter T. That's the truth that we have come to know. That's the truth that has been given to us by our families and by our cultures. That's the truth that we gain through our senses. That's the truth that is shared with us by loved ones. That's the truth we know through our own personal experiences. And it's appropriate that we make a distinction between that truth with a small t and the truth with a capital T. Because when we talk about the truth with a capital T, we are speaking about God. And God is so profound, so deep, so wondrous, so miraculous, so mysterious, so beyond our comprehension, that if anybody ever tries to claim that they hold and know the truth of or about God, that is the very definition of idolatry. And yet, every faith tradition, every religion, from the beginning of time, starting with paganism, running right up through the Greeks and the Romans and into the Middle Ages, and up to current day thought, including New Thought in unity, has been guilty of this at one time or another. And you might be sitting there reacting and saying, well, wait a minute, I get it when you're talking about the pagans, you know, their crazy worship of snakes and the sun and the moon and tigers and who knows what. And the Greeks and Romans were probably messed up when they're running around worshiping multiple gods. And I even get it if you're being critical of contemporary traditional church, you know, with all of their emphasis on dogma and ritual. But are you really going to suggest that unity is off base? So let me repeat that when we're referring to the truth with a capital T, we are talking about nothing less than God and nobody. No faith tradition, no religion, no system of beliefs, no movement has ever captured that divine essence, because that divine essence cannot be captured. And I believe it was an awareness of this that inspired that great mystic, Meister Eckhart, to pray, "Oh God, rid me of my God." Because he understood that as soon as we reach that point in our beliefs that we think we finally have it figured out, all that we have done is placed ourselves in that maze of life in which from that point forward, you're just going to be running into walls. But this kind of creates a dilemma for us, right? I mean, how can we live our lives with any degree of confidence if we know that what we know very well might not be so? You know, and if we're really going to sign on and believe to what I'm suggesting to you this morning, I mean, how can you even be sure that your next step is going to land you on solid ground or on quicksand? So let's go back a bit to that chapel service given by my classmate that I referred to earlier, because I think she had it half right. I believe she was mistaken when she suggested that we are not truth seekers, but I think she had it exactly right when she said that we are truth livers. And the reason I say that is, at the end of the day, all that you have is your God. And you either live your life according to your understanding of that God, or you got to find another God. And there's all sorts of them out there in the world, just too anxious to gain your attention. But when it's all said and done, your life absolutely will reflect whatever or whoever it is that you worship. So if you believe that the sun revolves around the earth instead of the other way around, you will live your life accordingly. And if you believe that the world is flat, you have to live your life always being a little bit careful not to sail off the edge. And if you believe that your routines, your habits, your addictions are your salvation, then you must honor them. And if you believe that the only way for you to gain love and acceptance is to listen to the dictates of the world, then what you have done is you have identified your God. And you have to live your life according to that. And really what you've done is you've taken your truth with a small t and you've capitalized it. Back in 1985, the BBC ran a series called The Day the Universe Changed. If you've never heard of it, I highly recommend it. And what it is, it's a 10-part documentary that takes you on a tour of human history in order to manifest how the universe only changes as our perception of what is real changes. And so the universe changed the day we realized that the earth revolved around the sun instead of the other way around. And the universe changed when we realized that the earth was not flat, but it was round. And the universe changed the day that penicillin was accidentally discovered. And the series does a good job of showing how so many of those things that we take for granted now that were major discoveries at the time really often occurred by happenstance. When somebody was pursuing something else or something really weird happened, like an apple falling on Sir Isaac Newton's head. But there are two important takeaways from this series. The first is that as our perception shifts from one perception to another, humankind itself is changed. And so once there's that aha moment, once there's that birth of new consciousness, either collectively or individually, it can never be the same, regardless of how desperately people might want to just hang on and claw onto, those old beliefs. And the second important takeaway from this is that as our perceptions shift from one to another, humankind becomes somehow a wee bit more of a force, an active force, and affecting change in the universe. Our call is really a difficult one because on the one hand, we are called to be on a forever lasting quest to discover more about the truth, knowing that with each new discovery, we're going to have to let go of what was our truth only yesterday. And at the same time, we are called to live our lives fully in accordance to what we hold to be our truth at any given moment. A few weeks ago, our family was a little bit uneasy because Hurricane Florence was headed straight for the Carolinas, and we have a grandson who was attending school in Columbia. And at one point, the teeth of that storm was aiming right straight for that location. And so the family talked to Ben, and we said, if you want to get out of there, get out of there. And he said, no, I got a lot of food and water, and I'm prepared to hunker down. I think it's going to be okay. Well, still we were a bit nervous. And then my wife Susan, in her wisdom, came to me and said, and we discussed, and she was right, as scary as this all is, and we're obviously concerned for him, there's a certain element of adventure and excitement to the whole thing. And this could end up being a really significant, defining moment for Ben. As we weather the storms that come at us every day, and we deal with broken relationships, and we deal with health issues, and we have to deal with financial crises, and we have to deal with hurts and pains on so many different levels. These are opportunities for them to be defining moments for us, because when these things come at us, they have a way of forcing us to determine just who and what is our God. And what exactly is it that is our truth? Well, we're here in the warmth and comfort of this church. It's raining outside. There's no hurricanes headed in our direction. But we're kind of on safe ground. And in this atmosphere, we ask the question, well, what exactly is ours to do? How do we go about learning more about the truth and assimilating it into our lives? And being good unity folk, you should go right to that point, well, it's got to be prayer and meditation. And if so, you would be absolutely right. Because when the crises are hitting at us, or even if we just have that sense of wonder and mystery, it's so important for us to get in touch with our mystical side and go as directly as we possibly can to the source. And generally, when we go into meditation, we remind ourselves, or if somebody's leading the meditation, you are reminded, take everything that's bothering you, all of your issues, your problems, your troubles, your to-do lists, and leave them outside. Leave them at the door. And it's really important because we want to engage in this prayerful experience with the fewest amount of distractions possible. But today I have another suggestion, because I really think it's important to amp it up a bit. The next time you go into prayer and meditation, leave your beliefs behind. And I mean all of them. I mean, as we've already talked, they're probably flawed at least a little bit anyway. And what do you need them for? Why not go into prayer with an understanding that there are no sacred cows? Why don't we go into meditation like that of a young child, naive and innocent? Why don't we go into prayer and to meditation, ready, willing, and anxious to meet our God and dare to be unclothed, so to speak, and learn our real truth without any preconceptions whatsoever? Going back to the program To Tell the Truth, I think there's a valid reason why they so often got it wrong. And you might say, well, the imposters were probably pretty good. And they always were. They were pretty deceptive. But I really think something else was at play. And that is that they were taking the information that was coming to them, whether it was the answers to the questions, the appearances of the contestants, or whatever, and they were trying to make those compatible with their own preconceived filters. And even the questions that they asked were coming from those filters, because that's the way our brain works. We have this very sophisticated filing system, and when we put information away so that when something we're not quite familiar with comes up, we could dip into that, and then we have it all figured out, right? If you want a modern day example of what I'm talking about, when you go home today, turn your television on for 15 minutes. I don't care what channel. And just allow yourself to be inundated with the political ads that are running right now. Okay? Talk about filters. You know, those ads are coming from their filters, and they're really trying hard to press the buttons that will touch upon yours. It's a little scary sometimes. But I have another suggestion for you when you go into prayer and meditation. Get scientific about it. And science is all about proving what it thinks it knows. So when you go into meditation and you listen to that still small voice and you come away with even a glimmer of your truth, test it out. When you go into the silence and you kind of hear, you know what? You really are loved. You really are unique. You really are worthy. You really are worthwhile. Why not take that and incorporate it into all of your relationships? Why not show up as who and what you truly are? Early on, when Susan and I were kind of interested in one another, I was going into the health club, she was coming out of the health club, and there she stood without an ounce of makeup, and her hair either had just been washed or needed to be, I'm not sure. And she gestured to me and said, "Well, you've seen it all now." And what I saw was somebody who was open and willing and receptive to being vulnerable. And so what I saw was somebody that was really gorgeous inside and out. But I have to warn you, if you do what I'm suggesting, you're going to get some pushback. You're going to get people that are going to be threatened by what you're doing, and they might even be hurtful, and you might be insulted, you might be ridiculed, and you might be laughed at. Not might, very likely. But so what? I mean, think about it. What is the sense, what's the purpose of even going into meditation to begin with, if your truth starts and ends with that meditation? I have another exercise for you today to suggest. Someday when you're all alone and in a silence, take one of your deepest beliefs. I don't care what plane. It could be with regard to relationships, maybe a political belief, maybe a spiritual belief that you hold dear, and pray over that belief critically. Allow yourself to consider that it may not be so, or at least that it may not be exactly so as you have been holding it and not thinking a whole lot about it for most of the time. So if you are a Donald Trump supporter, allow yourself to think that maybe everything that our president says and does is not for the good of our country and for us as citizens. And if you are a Donald Trump detractor, dare to allow yourself that there's some real value, some real good that could come out of this presidency. There's a very old adage that truth is stranger than fiction, and I absolutely subscribe to this, and I think there's a real reason why this is so, and that's that fiction is really uncomfortable with the blanks. Fiction really has a need to fill in the blanks. Fiction has the need to complete the narrative so that everything seems to be compatible and therefore more believable. Truth, on the other hand, has no such need. Truth welcomes the blanks. As far as truth is concerned, those blanks could be filled in somewhere down in time if and when they should be filled in. Because the truth is not dependent upon time. Truth is not dependent on anybody or anything. It just is. And I swear to you, everything I said to you today is true. It's just not the whole truth. Every thought is a prayer. And so we take our thoughts down out of our head and down into our hearts. This is a very special time for us. A time when we could gladly leave our problems and our troubles and our worries at the door. This is a time for us to get in touch with our true selves, our genuine selves. This is our time to enter into communion with the oneness. This is the now time to move ever closer to an awareness and appreciation of who and what we are as divine, beloved children of God. And so we take a breath and continue to go still deeper. Understanding that we are immersed in spirit and we engage with spirit. Spirit engages with us, through us, with us, and in us. And as we listen, we learn. And the deeper we go, the more we appreciate that we are creatures of unlimited possibilities. We are creatures of untold potentials. That nothing is beyond our reach. And every dream, every desire that we ever have had is absolutely possible as we move into alignment with God. Every joy is realizable because we are joy itself. And love is possible. Not because love is just a gift that is given to us, but because we are love itself. And as we grow in this knowing, with every breath we know the miracle of peace. Peace that is afforded to each and every one of us. The peace that we share. And so we just take a few minutes now, a few moments, to continue to listen to that still small voice within, without any expectations on our part where it should take us, without any pretensions on our part. We just allow ourselves to listen in the silence. And now, ever so softly, so gently, I call upon you to return to this space. Not to reawaken, because the awakening is what we experienced in that silence. And as we return, we understand that we leave nothing behind that we grew into in our moments of meditation. And so we take the messages, those voices that we heard in the silence, and the feelings of love and joy and peace that we experienced, and we bring them along with us through the remainder of this service, through the remainder of our day, and as we live our lives going into this week. And for this opportunity to come together this morning and share this prayerful experience, and together to touch the oneness. We are so grateful. We say, thank you, sweet Spirit, and so it is. Amen.
So now it's time for our offering. And I would like us to affirm this morning that we give in love and gratitude, and we receive in love and gratitude. Together.
We give in love and gratitude, and we receive in love and gratitude.